Hi everybody, Jennifer Schaus here, and we're coming to you live today from Washington, D.C. And thank you for joining us in our webinar series as we cover the DFARS, or the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement. Today is our final webinar in the DFARS series. We're covering DFARS Part 253, which is forms. But before we dig into today's content, let me just share some reminders that yes, our webinars were held every Wednesday and Friday. Again, today's the grand finale. All of our webinars are complimentary and recorded. You can find them over on the YouTube channel. We now have 700 or 780 webinars over there. Obviously, all of those are focused on government contracting. If you're looking for any of the corresponding PowerPoints, we post those on slideshare.net. That's a free site. You can log in with your LinkedIn credentials. Because many of the PowerPoints do have active links in them. Our webinars always have sponsor and advertising opportunities. We're going to thank our sponsors in just a moment, but if you're looking for a quick way to get to the recordings over on our website, just click on the section called the DFARS, and you'll find that we actually covered this back in 2021, and then obviously this year we are wrapping up. So just keep in mind, if you look at anything from 2021, there's our historical recordings and out of date, and who knows, the 2025 is seems to be going to be incurring some changes as well. A little bit about us. We are based in downtown DC, and our main focus is helping companies get onto the GSA schedule with some of the executive orders that you probably have seen since January, specifically March 20th, Executive Order 14240, more or less putting GSA at the forefront of procurement. So if your company needs any help getting onto the GSA schedule, send us an email, and we're happy to help you. If your company is selling to federal contractors, we offer advertising in our newsletter, as I mentioned, sponsorship in our various webinars, as well as events. We do have an event coming up. You'll see a slide on that in just a moment. But if you do want to advertise in our newsletter, we're almost at 39,000 subscribers, most of which are government contractors, and we do have a 45% discount now on advertising blocks starting next week. So if you're curious or want to advertise, drop us an email. Here's the event that we have coming up related to compliance. It's the Comic-Con conference over at Carasoft headquarters in Reston, Virginia, Wednesday, October 8th. You can read the topics that we're going to cover there, and the registration link is there. Again, we'll get you the slides that has that active link in it. Okay, we want to thank our in-kind sponsors. You can find all of our events and webinars over on the govevents.com platform, as well as our recordings. Also, the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority has an online calendar of events and webinars in the DC metro area. Find all of our events and webinars on the Fairfax County EDA website. Also, setasidealert.com publishes a newsletter that has opportunities for small women-owned, veteran-owned, hub-zone, and 8A firms. So visit setasidealert.com for more information. The Virginia Apex Accelerator, co-located at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, is a trusted resource and DoD-funded organization. They provide local training, counseling, and mentoring for aspiring government contractors, as well as matchmaking events. If you want to sell to state, local, or federal governments, please contact your local Apex Accelerator. You can use the links on the screen to find the training calendar, as well as free resources. And you can also schedule an appointment with your Virginia Apex Accelerator counselor today. Okay, we want to thank our paid sponsors, which is what allows us to put this webinar series on at no cost to you. Our friends over at BidSpeed have a platform that allows users to search public sector opportunities at the federal, state, and local level. Users can also find anything from a compliance matrix to teaming partners, incumbent point of contacts, expiring contracts, and proposal templates. Discover, manage, and secure government contracts with BidSpeed. BidSpeed is an official partner of the SBA's ETG Empower to Grow program. Contact BidSpeed today. If you are thinking about contracting with the Department of Defense, you need to prepare for CMMC. That's the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. C3 suite of CMMC solutions include C3 Command, C3 Catalyst, and C3 Core. These solutions answer the needs of every defense contractor. Whether your CMMC priority is a fast-defined path to compliance or you need the flexibility to manage multiple environments, C3 offers solutions. They are your partner with the deep expertise in IT, cybersecurity, and compliance. Contact C3 today. Work Plan. Work Plan is an online contract management and accounting tool designed for federal contractors and hosted by Amazon Web Services. Get and stay DCAA compliant. Manage expenses, timekeeping, and forecasting, plus use the Work Plan platform to manage your capture process and your CRM. Contractors can integrate their HR and payroll into this one easy-to-use solution. Contact Work Plan today. Ateria. Ateria specializes in Microsoft Cloud licenses and services for government and contractors. Ateria provides a business advantage for Microsoft Government Cloud licensing, managed IT administration and security, as well as data intelligence services and solutions. They implement secure, compliant, and scalable solutions to enhance operations, reduce risk, and uncover opportunities. Contact Ateria for expert IT assistance. Okay, last but not least, before we dig into the content today, we want to thank Gov White Papers. Gov White Papers is the central hub for government and government contractors. To find and post content geared towards solving public sector challenges with your free membership, you can add relevant white papers, case studies, data sheets, and more, making your content available to a wider government audience. Have the expertise, but not the content. Gov White Papers can also create, sorry, I skipped a slide here, can also create materials to meet your specific needs. Join for free today at govwhitepapers.com. Okay, we are here today to cover the DFARS Part 253. This is the final webinar in this particular series, and the topic is forms. We are lucky to have Krzysztof Milanarczyk, who is going to cover this for us. I've known Krzysztof for a while. He's a great speaker. I look forward to hearing his presentation. And again, thank you, Krzysztof, for taking the time not only to put together the slides, but sharing your time and expertise with us today. I'm going to stop talking and turn the floor over to you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's great to be here with the J. Schaus and Associates team. And you're in the right place if you want to learn about government contracts when you're connected with the great Jennifer Schaus and J. Schaus and Associates. And I want to point out something Jennifer mentioned early. Jennifer specializes in helping with GSA schedules, and she alluded to the fact that there are major changes in policy that make the GSA schedule more valuable. I do this for a living. I'm a qualified expert. I'm telling you that that is true. There has always been a debate of, do you absolutely need to have a GSA schedule to work in government contracting? Well, that debate has fundamentally changed and the scales have really shifted. This administration is absolutely focusing more on GSA schedules. So like Jennifer said, if you need to get a GSA schedule, you'd be in good hands to contact Jennifer J. Schaus and Associates for that. I'm Krzysztof Milanarczyk. I'm very pleased to go over this DFARS Part 253 with you. My background is I used to be on the government side. I was the government contracting officer at several different DoD agencies. So I was the one that would create the solicitation or craft the evaluation criteria that would really depend on whether you win that contract or not. And I would pick the winners and I'd negotiate, administer, and terminate the contracts after the fact. So I've seen it from the government side, but I'm now in the private sector where I help out small and medium-sized government contractors, primes and subs of all types, with their government contracts and subcontracts. I also do some teaching. I also serve as an expert witness when there is litigation involving government contracts. And I wrote some books. I wrote the best-selling books called Government Contracts in Plain English, including the sequel, Federal Acquisition Regulation in Plain English, and the third, Government Contracts Negotiation Simplified. I also wrote some more books. You can check them out. They're all available on Amazon. And then I have online courses that are available at christofllc.com or courses.christofllc.com. So I'm going to dive into forms and I'm going to give you the perspective of somebody that's been on the government side and now exclusively helps the private sector win, perform, and succeed in prime contracting and subcontracting. So with that, let's just get into it. The first form that we have to go over, and first of all, big picture, DFARS Part 253 is just devoted to the specialized forms that are available in the Department of Defense. So there's not a lot of direction or procedures or things like that going on in this section. So what I'm going to go over is what are the most common, the most important forms that you're going to be dealing with as a contractor. What do they mean for you? I'm going to give you the high level. Why is this relevant? What to look out for? What's the context? And hopefully that'll make you more familiar and more successful when you encounter these forms. And also it should help you recognize when they're maybe using the wrong form. So the first form that we have to talk about is the SF30, now that SF standard form. So there's a lot of these. This is the SF30, and this is the amendment of solicitation or the modification of contract. So some terminology. If they're going to change the document, when they change the RFP, request for proposal, or the solicitation, will it change to the RFP or solicitation? We call that amendment. And when we change the contract that is awarded to you that you have to actually perform when you're the winner, we call that a modification. So we want to keep that terminology straight because that gives us a clue and we want to be precise. Words do matter when we work in contracting. So it's an amendment to the solicitation. It's a modification of the contract. You may hear about changes to your contract being described as a mod, short for modification. And if you get a modification to your contract, which if you perform enough government contracts, you almost assuredly will, you're going to get that on an SF30. For example, they may not have to actually change any terms and conditions for you to encounter this modification form, this SF30, because if you get your option exercised, which you really want to do, of course, we all know government contracts are typically in 5-year increments, and they typically have a base year, and then the next 4 years have to be exercised as options. So you would be encountering this SF30 modification of the contract to exercise one of those options and to allow you to continue your services or supplies or whatever it is. So that's the SF30. You absolutely are going to encounter this thing. You might see it amending, changing the solicitation, but if you perform any government contract, you actually hope that you will see an SF30 because, again, if you never see one, it means they didn't exercise your option, and we don't want that. So become familiar with the SF30. You really want to pay attention to that first page. The cover page will explain exactly why the government is changing that contract through modification. You want to pay attention to that. I think it's in blocks 13 and 14, where the contracting officer will have to write exactly what they are doing, as in, well, we're adding money, or we're increasing a labor category, or we are exercising the option, or we are changing something in the statement of work. But always take a look at that very carefully before you sign the modification. Okay, let's go to the next slide, which is covering the SF33. So again, standard form 33. This is to award and solicit. So this is a really good form. You hope you get it if you win a government contract. The SF33 will say that you have won the contract and you are now being bound through a contractual instrument to perform. So this is the contract, capital T, capital C. And they also use the SF33 sometimes for the solicitation part of it as well. So you may become familiar with this form when you're trying to win the contract, when you are responding to a request for proposals, when you are responding to a solicitation. And you're also going to familiarize yourself with it when you win the award. Now, something to really be careful about, good idea to double check. When you win the award, double check that SF33, make sure that everything in the contract is exactly what you actually proposed and placed a bid against, or however you want to say that. Make sure that it lines up with the deal you thought you negotiated when you competitively bid or proposed on this actual solicitation. Let's go to the next form. Another common form, this is like the commercial version of the SF33. So the standard form 1449, that's standard form 1449. This is how we award a contract or how we make a solicitation, an RFP, for a contract when we're buying quote unquote commercial. Now, for those that are new, don't be confused. This is very confusing. We say, oh, it's a commercial government contract. And you go, well, isn't that a contradiction in terms? What we mean is the government can try to purchase things using commercial procedures. And the commercial procedures are found in FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation Part 12. And then their DFARS counterpart is, of course, in DFARS Part to 12. But the idea is that you as industry, you really like commercial contracting because it's designed to mimic and be the same as private sector procedures, which is far superior. We all know government contracting comes with a lot of extra compliance, administrative burden, strange regulations. It's a good sign for you to win contracts and get awarded using an SF 1449. It means that you are selling commercial products or commercial services to the federal government. And something to think about, if you are selling commercial supplies or commercial services, but you're getting the SF 33 awarded for your contract, you might want to carefully push back and suggest that the government instead uses the commercial procedures that would allow them to use the standard form 1449. So bottom line up front, you like the standard form 1449, you prefer it compared to the SF 33 because it shows that you're using these streamlined commercial procedures, and that's a good thing. It's going to save you time, it's going to save you money. Another thing to not be afraid of, if you sell professional services, you almost certainly sell commercial professional services. This is a wide open category. Commercial items does not just mean stuff and material and things and equipment. It does not just mean supplies. Your professional services offering, which is an incredibly broad category, that is considered commercial in many cases. And that means you are also eligible to sell those commercial services on the GSA schedule. Again, something to consider, something that's very important these days, something that Jennifer Schaus, J. Schaus and Associates can help you out with. Let's move to the next slide. The next form that, and remember, there's a lot of forms, folks. You know that. There are tons of forms that are standardized government forms. I'm hitting you with the highlights, the most important common forms that you cannot avoid, that you're gonna stumble upon. One that's very common for those of you who get defense contracts that are cost reimbursement. So you might get a cost plus fixed fee. You might get a cost plus award fee. You might get a cost plus incentive fee. But the point is, the government is reimbursing your expenditures as long as they are reasonable, allowable, and allocable to the contract. So reasonable is just a smell test. Is this a crazy price? Yes or no. Allowable just means, is there some regulation or law or contract term that says we cannot be reimbursed for that? For example, the costs of purchasing alcoholic beverages are usually unallowable. I know, spoil sport. And then the final one is allocable, meaning can you truly allocate? Can you blame these costs? Can you assign these costs to a specific reason for this contract? And remember, if the costs are spread among many different contracts you perform, it's going to be an indirect cost, therefore fractional. And that is where the allocation comes in. Be careful about how you allocate costs on a fractional basis across multiple contracts. Now, the DD 1547, the DD 1547, it's the weighted guidelines form. So if you're doing cost plus contracting, cost reimbursement, they call it fee, F-E-E. Now, you're going to probably call it profit, but they're going to assign something called a fee on top of the reimbursed estimated cost of the contract. They don't know what the cost is going to be. It's cost reimbursement. They're going to reimburse your actual cost, but then they're going to assign a certain amount of fee that is usually going to be negotiated before you even start work. And they're going to use the term fee. You as a company, you'll probably consider it more like something that is called profit. That's okay, but just know what term the government uses and understand that this weighted guidelines form, this is exactly the form that they're going to use to figure out what fee can I assign to your company. So you want to play around with this form. The government is going to input numbers in the weighted guidelines form, but you should go look up the form and play around with it yourself and try to punch in the ideal numbers you think are appropriate to get to the ideal fee that you think is appropriate. And the limits are basically 10% fee is a statutory maximum, or if you are doing a research and development contract, the statutory maximum is 15% fee. But depending on what you punch in, or what the contracting officer punches in to this DD 1547 weighted guidelines form, it's going to suggest a different fee. It might say, oh, I don't know, 7% or 8% or 10 or something in between, all depending on what factors, what numbers, what information you punch into the form. So you want to be familiar with the form so that you can suggest and influence to the contracting officer what is appropriate or what is not appropriate to punch into the form. In other words, when they come back and say, oh, your fee should be 7%, you want to be able to say, I did the weighted guidelines and I put in the following data and that spit out 9.8%. So let's compare what we used on that form. It's a very objective form where you're going to know exactly what it spits out depending on what info you put in. So you want to have that power on your side, the power of knowledge and information and experience, to be able to tell the government, oh, I think you filled out the form wrong. I think you should fill it out this way and give me a higher fee. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Another really common form, but one that you are not actually going to get to fill out, but something that you can influence and something you must understand. It's called the DD 2579, and it's the Small Business Coordination Record. This is the form that the contracting officer, in coordination with the federal small business advocate, is going to use and sign to determine, should we set aside this contract for a small business, for a women-owned small business, for an 8A contract, for a hub zone contractor, for a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business. That decision is the entire purpose of this form. So this form is going to be based on market research. Here's where you come in. Market research. Where does that come from? The contracting officer, the acquisition team, maybe the small business advocate, they're collecting market research. And one way they do that is releasing an RFI, a request for information, or a sources sought notice, SSN. And they're collecting info to determine, well, how many small businesses are out there that will do the work? Or how many service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses? Or how many women-owned small businesses? So the way you can influence this form is by throwing your hat in the ring and responding, or picking up the phone, or emailing, but in some way letting the government know that you are available, you are capable, and you are a small business in category XYZ. Because if there's 2 or more companies in that category, that's going to be reported on this small business coordination record, and that's going to strongly influence the government to recommend that the contract be set aside to a specific small business category. And remember, if it gets set aside to your small business category, you've just made an incredible advantage for yourself. You have shut out every other competitor that does not share your small business certification. So participate in any way, shape, or form that you can in market research so that you can influence how the government fills out the small business coordination record, and therefore impacts the decision of whether that contract will be set aside for your category or not. Let's move to the next slide. Now, this form, DD 1172, is the application for an ID card. It gets you enrolled in the DoD system for issuing common access cards. Now, it does stuff for the federal employees too, but this is a contractor audience. What we care about is if you're in professional services and you directly help out the government, if you're in, they call it SETA, S-E-T-A, Scientific Engineering and Technical Analysis, if you're doing on-site services, if you're doing staff augmentation, that means that you're going to be working, your employees are going to be working side by side with federal employees within federal buildings, and they're probably going to be typing on federally issued government furnished equipment, computers and laptops. Now, to do any of that, to get on the computer network, to walk into the federal building, they're going to need a special ID card. It's called a common access card. There's another name like PIV. There's all kinds of names for it. They pronounce common access card as CAC, like CAC. And it's really important. The form is available. It's publicly available. If you work in professional services, you will probably become familiar with the DD 1172 and how to fill it out. And you're probably going to have to help your employees fill it out correctly over and over and over again for every single employee. And they might have to fill it out again at the end of the option year if it gets exercised or if they transition to a new contract. So the business advice I'd give you, someone at your company needs to be familiar with this form, and you should have an in-house standard operating procedure in the form of an instructional chart or one-pager for every new employee of here is exactly how you fill out this form. Because believe me, you think the form is simple, you think it has instructions, okay, that's all true, but there are strange nuances at every federal agency about exactly how they want you to fill out the form, and some of them will even tell you, despite the instructions, do not fill out certain sections of that form. And you getting this right the first time is imperative to you delivering your employees on time so that they can support the government and so that you can get excellent performance ratings on your government contract. So all that to say, yeah, this is just a boring form about how you get your ID card, but it is an integral part of your business if you provide services, and somebody at your company should be the expert on that form, and you should probably operationalize it into a document that you can send to your new employees about exactly how to fill out that form, that DD1172, so that they can be issued a common access card, an identification card that gets them the ability to walk into the building or plug it into their laptop so that they can access the federal government network. Let's go to the next slide. I think this is the final slide of all these forms, and this is a big category. This category is called DoD issuances. So think in terms of subset here. Everything else that I'm talking about is a subset of the DoD issuances. Okay, so kind of like how a square is a subset of rectangles, not every rectangle is a square. It's kind of like that relationship. So DoD issuance is the most general thing, and it includes DoD directives, DoD instructions, DoD administrative instructions. It also includes directive type memoranda and DoD publications and manuals. Wow, that's a lot, but I'll tell you, you may encounter each one of these to answer or give you advice on exactly how your client, the government, is going to perform something, and therefore how you have to comply to be a good government contractor. So you should bookmark this website. It's called esd.whs.mil. That's the website of Washington Headquarters Services, the Executive Services Directorate. Well, that sounds very confusing. It's the Pentagon, okay? So that website is for the Pentagon, and there's an office within the Pentagon that is exclusively devoted to organizing and making publicly available and revising these DoD issuances. I have firsthand experience in writing and publishing and changing these DoD issuances, and they touch on every issue you could imagine, including small business set-asides and whether your company is the only one eligible for the contract, including what is the commuting region for any area in the country, and when can I bill the government for quote-unquote travel versus a normal commute. They also answer things like security clearance questions, building access. I could go on and on and on. There's a lot of them, but the most common ones you'll encounter would be the directive and the instruction, and those are going to be abbreviated. You'll find them as DODI if it's a DoD instruction, and then a DoD directive. And then the other stuff like, directive type memo, DoD publications and manuals, those might be important, but it's more likely that you'll be looking up DoD directives and DoD instructions, and the best place to find them by number, by date, by subject, by searching content, whatever you want to look up, bookmark that website, esd.whs.mil. And again, that is the Pentagon office that is in charge of these forms, broadly called DoD issuances, something you're going to need to become familiar with. Next slide. Yes, this is the final one. So this isn't even a standard form. I just threw this one in because I thought it was incredibly important for you to know as a government contractor. My theme here is to tell you about the major forms, the common forms that are going to really impact you and what you need to know and how you can succeed. Well, this one, the source selection decision document, it's not official and there's no template, and they have all these different titles for it depending on what agency. And this applies in the Department of Defense or any civilian federal agency whatsoever. There's always going to be some document that is explaining, why did you win the contract? Why did the government award the contract to your company? It's explaining how you beat all the competitors. So sticking with my theme, how do you influence this in a positive way? What's the smart play? Consider in the back of the mind, when you write your proposal, when you're trying to impress the government, when you give them your bid, remember that they have to translate why they want you into this written document explaining why they chose you. So if you understand that they have to write down why your company had superior strengths compared to the weaknesses of other companies, that's going to help you write your proposal to be specific and have concrete strengths called out. And a strength is anything that helps increase the risk of your successful performance. And a risk or weakness is anything that makes it more likely that you will fail. So whenever you get a bid protest, whenever a court looks at, the decision to award a contract, and every time the government internally awards a contract, they have to write some document like this saying, why did they give the contract to your company? So your job to win business, to win contracts, to gain revenue, is to make your proposal so tight, so compelling, so clear that it is unmistakable why your company should be awarded the contract. And you want to break out your strengths and the highlights and the win themes that speak to the evaluation criteria used in the solicitation. So always have the end result in mind. You don't just want to win the contract, you want to make it easy for the government to justify and write down exactly why you won the contract. So think in terms of the end goal and the paperwork that's on the government side. Trust me, I was the government contracting officer. I had to fill out all this paperwork. The easiest proposals to score were the ones that directly matched up everything with the evaluation criteria and were very clear about what is a strength that I should be paying attention to. So you can do that too, and I recommend that you do. Next slide. Well, I think that's it. We've covered some of the major some of the major forms that are involved in government contracting, and we've reached the end of the DFARS. Another have an effect. Yes.
I was going to say, it sounded like you just cut out at the end here a little bit, so feel free to repeat what you just said.
Okay, I was just pointing out that we just covered all these important forms, and we covered DFARS Part 253, the end of the DFARS. And I wanted to say that there's the revolutionary FAR overhaul, and that's probably going to affect the DFARS. So just keep your eye on the news and on the changes that are coming down the road to both the FAR and also to the Defense Supplement, which is the Defense FAR Supplement, the DFARS. So that's it. I really appreciate everybody attending. I hope you learned something. Stay in contact with me. My email is christoph@christophllc.com. My website is the same, christophllc.com. And I would love to help you out, whether you're a prime sub, small, medium, large, or whatever. I also do some teaching, and check out the books on Amazon. It's the Government Contracts in Plain English series of 3 books. With that, I'll turn it back over to Jennifer J. Schaus and Associates with my thanks and my appreciation to everybody and to the audience, and I'll see you next time.
Great, Christoph, excellent presentation. I apologize for the technical hiccups. I think some of these slides were on a timer, so I apologize. But fantastic content. You always do a great job of just laying it out in plain English, as you say. Again, if anybody has questions, please feel free to contact Christoph directly. He's a great guy, easy to work with, and he's been on both sides, so he understands what it takes to get it done. And just a quick reminder that if you are listening to this on our YouTube channel, Give us a like, leave a comment. We would love to hear from you. And if you're here with us live, the YouTube recording should be up within about 24 hours. This concludes our DFARS webinar series, but stay tuned. There will be more webinars in the future coming with the FAR overhaul, as well as our conference, the Comic-Con conference, Wednesday, October 8th over at Carasoft in Reston, Virginia. We've got opportunities to attend, sponsor, and partner with us on the event. Again, the link there is at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get the slides out to everybody shortly. Slides are also over on slideshare.net because I know that Christoph referenced at least one, maybe two links in his presentation. So thanks everybody for joining us, and this concludes our DFARS webinar series for 2025. Thank you.